My name is Olivia, although you'll often hear me called Liz or Lizzie. Some people even refer to me as Betty, a nickname I've always disliked. My parents and older sister, Kate, made up what I would describe as an average family. It really made a difference that Kate is 7 years my senior. Our home has always felt like a temple dedicated to Kate. Mom and Dad cherished her sloppy drawings, which they treated like Picasso's, as much as her first steps and smiles, which were displayed on every wall. There I was just a moment ago. It became routine for me, playing with Kate's old toys and wearing her hand-me-downs. I had no idea it was bad, therefore I didn't criticize it. Quietness and composure are new skills I've developed. Over the years, the trend persisted. I gave Kate her old clothes and she got new ones. I ended up with her outgrown toys while she received the newest ones. I, however, never once grumbled. I merely presided. The years of high school flew by. Kate had already left home and was away at university on a full scholarship by that point. I was hoping that my parents would take notice of me more now. Nope, the whole focus was on Kate's college life, her new romance, and her future plans. And then the moment of revelation arrived. On a Sunday afternoon, Kate swarmed into the home, beaming with joy. She yelled out, "Mom, Dad, I'm getting married," with genuine excitement. She sounded like she had just announced a cancer cure. My mom started crying. My dad began to yell and cheer. I did nothing but sit there, trying to figure out if anybody paid attention to my presence. Glancing towards me, Kate's eyes gleamed. "Lizzie, you'll be my bridesmaid, right?" Encouraging a smile, I gave a nod. "Certainly, Kate. Well done." While they were all embracing, crying, and laughing, I quietly left the room. Nobody took note. Never did they. Unexpectedly, Kate's wedding turned out to be quite a spectacle. As I sat in the kitchen one night, I overheard my parents having a private conversation. A tightness in Dad's voice indicated that they would need to borrow money. Weeping was Mom's sound of voice. "I am aware, but today is Kate's special day. None of us can disappoint her." A knot began to develop in my stomach. The cost of Kate's wedding was driving them into debt. I wanted to say something, but I restrained myself from doing so since I understood how absurd this was. This house didn't care much about my thoughts. It was a very spectacular wedding. Our parents were so proud of Kate because she looked like a princess. As usual, I felt completely invisible as I stood there in my bridesmaid dress. Kate revealed yet another shocking fact following the honeymoon. By the time we were eating our Sunday supper, she had already declared her decision to become a housewife. Jack makes enough for both of us. Looks were exchanged between Mom and Dad. Their worried expressions belied the fake smiles they wore. "That's absolutely fantastic, my darling," Mom exclaimed. "If that's what makes you happy." I wanted to scream. They'd taken out a loan for her wedding, and now she wasn't even going to work. But I kept my mouth shut, pushing my food around my plate. It wasn't long before Kate was pregnant, with twins, no less. Our parents went absolutely nuts. "Twins," Dad kept saying, shaking his head in wonder. "Can you believe it?" I could believe it. I could also believe what came next. "We should help them buy a house," Mom suggested one night. "They'll need the space with 2 babies on the way." Dad nodded. "We could make the down payment on mortgage. There's that nice place not far from here." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Are you serious?" I blurted out. "You're already in debt from the wedding, and now you want to buy them a house." They both looked at me like they'd forgotten I was there. Maybe they had. "Olivia," Mom said, her voice stern, "this is what family does. We help each other." The twins were born a few months later, 2 little boys, cute as buttons. Mom and Dad were over the moon, spending every free moment at Kate's new house, cooing over the babies. Meanwhile, I was finishing up high school, trying to figure out my next steps. College was the obvious choice, but how was I going to pay for it? One night, I worked up the courage to ask, "Mom, Dad, I've been looking at colleges." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, not looking up from the photo album of the twins she was putting together. "I was wondering, could you help me with tuition?" They exchanged that look again, the one that said they'd rather be talking about anything else. "Well, sweetie," Dad started, "we'd love to help, but with the loan for Kate's wedding and helping with the house. We can cover half," Mom jumped in, "but you'll need to figure out the rest on your own." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Half. That's all they could do after everything they'd done for Kate. But I knew arguing was pointless. "Okay," I said, my voice small. "Thanks." As I walked back to my room, I heard them resume their conversation about the twins' latest accomplishments. I closed my door, leaned against it, and for the first time in years, I let myself cry. I managed to get into the local community college, not my dream school, but the only one I could afford with my parents' measly contribution. To make up the difference, I landed a part-time job at a nearby diner. Let me tell you, waiting tables while trying to keep up with college coursework is no picnic. I dragged myself home most nights dead on my feet, dreaming of my bed. But even that small comfort was often yanked away from me. It started one Friday evening. I had just finished a brutal shift and was looking forward to face planting into my pillow when I walked in to find Kate in our living room, the twins crawling around her feet. "Oh, Lizzie," she exclaimed, "thank God you're here. I'm at my wits' end with these two. Mind watching them for a bit. Jack and I haven't had a date night in ages." Before I could even open my mouth, she was out the door, leaving me with two screaming 3-year-olds. "What the hell?" I muttered, staring at my nephews. Don't get me wrong, I love the little terrors, but this wasn't what I signed up for. Mom wandered in from the kitchen. "Your sister is exhausted. This is what family does. Besides, it'll be good practice for when you have your own kids." I wanted to scream. "Kids?" I was barely keeping my head above water as it was. This became a regular occurrence. Every weekend, without fail, Kate would show up, drop off the twins, and disappear. Sometimes she'd claim she had errands. Other times, she and Jack would go catch a movie or grab dinner. And every time I'd end up playing babysitter. One Saturday, after a particularly hellish week of exams, I'd had enough. Kate had just breezed out the door, leaving the twins mid-tantrum. "Mom, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "this isn't fair. I'm exhausted. I work, I study, and now I'm expected to give up my weekends, too." Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "Lizzie, your sister needs the help. You should be glad to do it." "But what about what I need?" I protested. "I'm running myself right here." Mom sighed. "Olivia, don't be selfish. Kate has 2 children to look after. You don't know how hard that is." I gave up. It was clear they weren't going to listen, so I resigned myself to my fate. Classes during the week, work in the evenings, and unpaid babysitting on the weekends. Personal life? That was a joke. The closest thing I had to a social life was making small talk with customers at the diner. Dates? Forget about it. Between work, study, and the twins, I barely had time to shower, let alone meet someone. I was at my breaking point. The constant juggle of work, school, and forced babysitting had left me drained, both physically and mentally. I needed a break, a real one, away from everything and everyone. So I made a decision. "Mom, Dad," I announced one evening, "I'm taking a few days off, going to the beach." Their reaction surprised me. For once, they actually seemed happy for me. "That's wonderful, Lizzie," Mom exclaimed. "Where are you going?" Told them about the cheap motel I'd found online right by the ocean. Nothing fancy, but it was all I could afford. Dad nodded approvingly. Good for you, kiddo. You deserve a break. I almost fell over from shock. Was this really happening? Were they actually acknowledging my needs for once? The day finally came. I packed my bag, hopped on a bus, and felt the weight lifting off my shoulders with every mile that passed. When I finally arrived at the coast, I couldn't believe my luck. The motel was small and a bit run down, but the ocean view was spectacular. I dropped my bag in the room and headed straight for the beach. The salty air filled my lungs, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I treated myself to lunch at a cute little seaside cafe, savoring every bite. No screaming kids, no homework, no customers to please. Just me, my thoughts, and the sound of the waves. As the sun started to set, I headed back to the motel, already planning my evening of peaceful solitude. But as I approached my room, I heard familiar voices. Surprise, Lizzie! I froze. There, standing outside the room next to mine, were Mom and Kate, with the twins running circles around their legs. What are you doing here? I stammered, my heart sinking. We couldn't let you be all alone on your vacation, Mom chirped. So we decided to join you. We're right next door. I noticed their suitcases outside one of the nicer rooms. Of course, they'd splurged on themselves while I was in the budget option. Before I could process what was happening, Kate was pushing the twins toward me. The boys have been dying to see the ocean. You don't mind watching them for a bit, do you? I want to take a walk on the beach. And I need to run to the store, Mom added. We'll be back soon. Just like that, they were gone, leaving me standing there with two overexcited 3-year-olds tugging at my hands. What followed was the worst vacation of my life. The twins were out of control, tearing around my small room like tornadoes. They ripped the curtains, broke glasses, and somehow managed to clog the toilet with apples. I had to shell out money I didn't have for repairs and to call a plumber. By the end of the weekend, I was more exhausted than I'd ever been. The final straw came when Kate had the audacity to complain about how tired she was from all the traveling. I lost it. The argument that followed was epic. I yelled. Mom cried. Kate sulked. And the twins screamed through it all. That evening, I gathered all of my belongings and, first thing in the morning, boarded the bus home. Somewhere inside, I felt a change as I watched the shoreline fade away. We can't let this continue. There needed to be a shift. Feeling the weight of fatigue pressing down on me, I forced myself to make it through the front door. As always, Dad sat in front of the television. He hardly uttered a greeting as I walked by. That night, my head was a jumble of feelings and half-thought-out strategies, and I collapsed into bed. I had a plan for the next day before sunrise. I could hear the front door bang as I was in the middle of gathering my belongings. A harsh and furious tone emanated from Mom's voice. The Queen, are you not here? She burst into my doorway, her rage visible on her face. I still can't believe you abandoned us like that. Can you fathom the challenge of taking care of the twins all by ourselves? A response about how I constantly managed the twins on my own came out of my mouth. I simply continued packing instead. As Mom took in the sight, her eyes narrowed. Tell me what you're up to. As calmly as I could muster the words, I'm leaving. I spoke. I am departing. My own life is what I need. I could tell right away how they were going to respond. What gives you the right to be so self-centered? Mom sobbed. After all that we've accomplished for you? Father's cheeks flushed. What a selfish girl you are. Is your sister anything you've considered? With twins to care for, who will assist her? A sudden jolt went through my entire being. My sister, how could she be? Where am I in this? Who in this family has ever considered my needs? Oh, Olivia. My mom let out a gasp. No, I'm being quite serious right now. I continued. Kate is married. Delegate some child care to him. I must prioritize my personal life. "Listen up, young lady," Dad said with a scowl. "We will not continue to pay for your college if you walk out that door. Prepare to face the world solo." I glanced at them, the two individuals whose job it was to love and support me no matter what. It hit me at that same second that I had never met them before. As I fastened the zipper on my travel bag, I said the words, "Fine. I'd rather to be alone than deal with this. No privacy, no downtime, just demands and yelling children. I am through." I shoved my way past them, lugging my bag down the flight of steps. I ignored their persistent yelling as they trailed after. Mom gave it one more go just as I was about to grab the doorknob. "Do not return if you depart at this moment." With one hand on the doorknob, I waited. After that, I unlocked the door and went out into the dark, never looking back. A haze descended over the subsequent weeks. As I frantically sought a more long-term answer, I collapsed into the couch of a fellow student. I was able to find a roommate through a female in my study group after some time had passed. The two of us were able to find a little apartment that barely fit our budget. I had to work extra shifts at the diner because my folks cut me off financially. In addition to my education, I was working nearly full-time. There were times when I was so exhausted that I couldn't think well, and I worried that I wouldn't make it. Nevertheless, guess what? I had never felt so liberated before. I didn't have anyone pressing me for time. Nobody was pressuring me to babysit or making me prioritize their needs above mine. Even though my flat was cramped and my bed simply a mattress on the floor, it was still my own. With a tenacity I had no idea I had, I dove headfirst into my coursework. Everything I did, from pulling all-nighters to missing social events to working additional shifts, was geared towards my future goal. I was unaware that 2 years had elapsed. On the day of my graduation, I scanned the audience as I sat in the auditorium, waiting for my name to be called. Even though I had reserved seats in the hopes of seeing Mom, Dad, or even Kate, nobody showed up. Leaving college seemed like entering a completely different universe. My financial situation improved dramatically once I secured a position with a marketing firm. Getting by wasn't my only concern. After what felt like an eternity, I finally felt like I could relax. My own residence was rented by me. While unremarkable, it belonged solely to me. Just you, no noisy roommates or troublesome relatives. It was really magnificent, I must say. Everyday activities that I had previously neglected to accomplish became a priority for me. I met new people, went on dates, and even had a few brief relationships. Nothing major, but it was enjoyable to temporarily lose myself in youth and carelessness. Who were my parents? Although they were scarcely visible, they were still there. We had brief, stilted chats once a month, complete with uncomfortable silences and barely concealed disdain. I wasn't in a hurry to make amends, and they were still bitter over my leaving. My 25th birthday arrived after that. Dinner and cocktails were on the agenda with my pals, nothing too crazy. However, my mother called me a week prior. "Olivia, we would love for you to celebrate your birthday with us," she added, her voice seeming strangely upbeat. "Expect to see everyone in the family there." I consented, despite my misgivings. Visiting my parents' residence was like taking a trip down memory lane. Their twins, who are now 7 years old, were there with Kate and her husband, whirling around like miniature storms. As they meandered about, cousins, aunts, and uncles greeted one another with grins and embraces. As I entered, they all shouted out, "Happy birthday, Lizzie," respectively. I graciously accepted hugs and well wishes while putting on a fake smile. The presents followed. Everything from clothing to books to gift cards was ordinary. Then my mom presented me with an envelope that had a flourish on it. "This is a collective effort," she exclaimed with a smile. When I opened it and realized that it included a beach resort ticket, my stomach dropped. Everyone's coming. Father made the announcement with much pride. A massive family getaway. Everything has been covered by us. I went completely still. A getaway with the kids, twins included. It was just like my beach vacation gone wrong again. Mom gave me a hard grip while muttering, "Don't you dare make a scene, not in front of everyone." I was about to refuse when she grabbed my arm. I thanked them and smiled, but I was really yelling within. As the festivities drew to a close, guests left one by one, leaving just my parents, Kate, and her family. I lost control at that point. "I'm not going," I declared simply. "What do you mean?" Angastically, Kate let out a gasp. "But it's actually a vacation with the family." "Indeed," was my response, "and there's no way I'm going to spend my vacation watching your kids once more." Suddenly, Kate started crying. "You certainly don't care about us, do you? Your nephews don't matter to you." "I am concerned about them adequately," I retorted. "But if I wanted kids, I'd have my own." The debate continued indefinitely. My mom said I was self-centered. Disappointed, Dad gave a look. There was no end to Kate's sobbing. All of them wanted to guilt me into giving in, so they put pressure on me. My voice was exhausted, but I managed to utter the word "fine" at last. "I'll go." It was as if they had achieved a major triumph, and their expressions reflected it. Strange things were ahead of them, nevertheless. On the day of departure, I was at the airport with my infectiously happy family. While I watched the twins, Kate and her husband were nearly jumping with joy, plotting all the alone time they would have. "You'll have so much fun with Aunt Lizzie." Kate winked at me as she told the boys. "She'll take you to the beach, build sand castles, maybe even go snorkeling." Parents were also overjoyed, gushing about how great it would be for Kate to get some time off. On my whole vacation, no one once inquired as to my vacation preferences. Everyone clearly thought of me as a cheap babysitter. We were walking toward the check-in counter when I decided to take action. "Oh," I said, acting as if I were uneasy. "I have to go to the bathroom. Feel free to check in, everyone. Let's meet at the gate." In the midst of juggling bags and eater kids, they nodded. I turned and walked quickly in the other direction after watching them join the line. As I made my way to a new check-in station, my heart was racing. My passport and plane ticket to a quiet island resort, which I had purchased weeks earlier, were both turned over to the airport officials. After passing through security, I sought out a peaceful spot and retrieved my phone. While I was typing out a note for Mom, my fingers trembled a little. "I will not accompany you. I am taking a vacation of my own accord. You will have a wonderful time on your vacation." Because I was in no mood to cope with the consequences just now, I sent the message and promptly shut off my phone. At the other check-in counter, I could practically hear the eruption of rage and shock. Just as I got comfortable in my airplane seat, I momentarily turned on my phone again. Notifications of missed calls, voicemails, and angry texts flooded it at once. Mom left one angry voicemail, which I listened to. "How could you possibly leave your loved ones like this, Olivia Morgan? It's all your fault. Your sister's husband is enraged, and she is inconsolable. To keep an eye on the lads. They were relying on you. I was all set. You are the most self-centered, discourteous person." I watched the plane take off while sipping my champagne. An ache of shame persisted, a knot in my gut. Eventually, I was prepared to face with the consequences. Anger, accusations, and charges of being selfish and ungrateful would ensue via the phone. On the other hand, I felt liberated, a sense of lightness as if I could take a deep breath for the first time in what feels like an eternity. I was leaving on an alone journey. Skip the responsibilities, the babysitting, and the family strife. Nothing but me, the beach, and my own plans. I felt a burden melt away as the jet landed on the tiny tropical island. The gentle wind that met me at the airport's threshold was as if to say, "Welcome to freedom." Right on the beach at a small but lovely resort, I checked in. My insatiable curiosity led me to pull out my phone as I began to unpack. It was inundated with notifications in an instant. It seemed like a deluge of hundreds of messages, texts, voicemails, and missed calls. I entertained myself and felt a little anxious as I browsed through the texts. How could you do this to us? My mother. You ruined everything. My name is Kate. You're so selfish, Olivia. My dad. I felt compelled to grin. I had finally prioritized my own needs over their demands. Once more, I switched off the phone and deposited it in the hotel safe. The following week, I was unavailable. What an eventful week that was. I attempted surfing, snorkeled, read novels on the beach, and lounged around the whole time. I hung around all night, had conversations with other tourists, went on a few of blind dates, and did whatever the hell I wanted. Just the sound of the sea, no worries, no obligations, and no wailing children. Unfortunately, we had to leave way too early. Coming back to my apartment, I felt more grounded, refreshed, and tanned than I had in years. Unfortunately, my serenity was about to be shattered by the actual world. My door was pounded the following day. Angry Mom and Kate were waiting for me when I opened it. How dare you? Mom screamed and stormed in uninvited. Do you have any idea what you've done? Not far behind was Kate. Our whole trip was destroyed by you. What a tragedy for the lads. Their accusatory and insulting diatribe began with their voices mingling. I was an awful sister and daughter because I was self-centered and selfish. I was indebted to them for the plane ticket they had purchased for me, the vacation they had spoiled, and the child care I had let slip. After a few minutes of listening to their tirade, I let it all sink in. I then spoke, remaining composed but resolute. That's enough, I remarked, my voice barely audible over their din. You don't have any claim on me, neither time nor money nor child care. Now that I'm an adult, it's my decision. I put up a hand when Mom was about to argue. We'll not go into any further detail about this. Go away. Our chat can resume when you are prepared to treat me with dignity and remain composed. I believe it would be better if we refrain from communicating till then. Out of shock, they just gazed at me. They proceeded to storm out after using a couple more strong words. I exhaled deeply when the door banged shut behind them. It was difficult, but the feeling was correct. I changed a lot during the next weeks. I relocated to a new apartment in a distant section of town without informing my family of my address change. In addition to devoting myself fully to my job, I also began to pursue other interests, such as painting, yoga, and even language study. At times, it was challenging. There were moments of doubt, sensations of remorse. But I knew I'd made the correct decision every time I returned to my quiet apartment, every time I planned anything without thinking about who would babysit, and every time I followed my passions without guilt. What is ahead is completely unknown to me. Maybe eventually my family and I will find a way to have a healthy connection. Perhaps not. But one thing is certain. No matter what happens, I'll take it on my own terms and be proud of the life I've chosen for myself.